Material ecocriticism is a theoretical approach that examines how matter tells stories. It challenges the assumption that only humans create meaning. The material world, rocks, rivers, chemicals, and bodies, possesses its own narrative agency. This perspective emerged from the material turn in philosophy, which insists that matter is not passive or inert, but vibrant and active. The central idea is simple yet profound. All matter is storied matter. Everything around us, from the food we eat to the air we breathe, carries meanings and histories. A plastic bottle floating in the ocean tells a story of consumption, waste, and global trade networks. The radioactive soil of a nuclear test site narrates Cold War politics and ongoing ecological harm. Our own bodies, with their chemical compositions and genetic codes, are living texts that record our environmental and social conditions. Central to material eco-criticism is the concept of agency. Traditionally, agency was seen as exclusively human. Only people could act intentionally and create meaning. Material eco-criticism challenges this view, arguing that non-human matter also has agency. This doesn't mean rocks have minds or intentions. It means that material forces from bacteria to climate patterns actively shape the world in ways that exceed human control. Barrett's concept of interaction captures this well. Unlike interaction, which assumes separate entities coming together, interaction suggests that things emerge through their relations. Nothing exists independently. Everything is entangled. A tree is not separate from the soil, sunlight, and rain that sustain it. A human body is not separate from the air it breathes or the food it consumes. These entanglements mean that matter and meaning are inseparable. The physical and the semiotic always co emerge. Alaimo's concept of transcorporeality emphasizes how bodies are porous and interconnected. Our bodies are not sealed containers but open systems exchanging substances with the environment. Pollution enters our bloodstream. Microplastics accumulate in our tissues. Climate change affects our health. This transcorporeal reality challenges the idea that we are separate from nature. For disabled people, this insight is especially powerful. Clare argues that disabled bodies are often seen as abnormal and unnatural. Yet, they reveal the arbitrary nature of these categories. Disability is not simply a personal tragedy, but a material condition shaped by social and environmental factors. The desire to cure disability often reflects a narrow view of what bodies should be, rather than embracing bodily diversity as part of nature's creativity. Queer ecology brings together queer theory and ecological thought to challenge the assumption that nature is inherently heterosexual. Historically, LGBTQ people have been condemned as against nature, their desires seen as unnatural perversions. Queer ecology exposes how this condemnation relies on a narrow ideological view of nature that ignores the diversity of sexual behaviors in the natural world. Bruce Bagemill's research on animal homosexuality demonstrates that same sex behavior is widespread in nature. Over 1,500 animal species engage in homosexual activity, from penguins to dolphins to primates. This biological exuberance undermines claims that homosexuality is unnatural, but science itself has often been heteronormative, ignoring or explaining away evidence that contradicts assumptions about reproductive sex as the only natural form. The concept of nature cultures, coined by Donna Haraway, insists that nature and culture are always intertwined. There is no pure nature untouched by human influence, just as there is no culture separate from material conditions. This insight challenges environmentalists who seek to preserve pristine wilderness and social constructivists who treat nature as purely a cultural invention. Queer ecology extends this insight by showing how natural spaces are also political spaces. Parks and wilderness areas have historically been designed to promote heterosexual behavior and exclude queer people. But queer communities have reclaimed these spaces, using them for cruising, community building, and political resistance. Nature is not inherently heteronormative, it is made through social practices that can be challenged and transformed. Mortimer Sandilands develops the concept of melancholy natures to address the grief of environmental loss. In a culture that often fails to recognize non human life as grievable, environmental destruction becomes an unacknowledged wound. We mourn species extinction, habitat destruction, and climate change, but these losses are often not publicly recognized or collectively mourned. The melancholic condition has political implications. Instead of rushing to replace what we have lost or fetishizing about to be lost wilderness, we might dwell with loss. Writers like Jarman and Grover show how grief for environmental destruction can be linked to personal experiences of loss, particularly AIDS. Their work suggests that acknowledging loss is essential to developing an ethical relationship with the natural world. Melloy's nature writing offers another perspective on queer ecology. Drawing on Wilson's concept of biophilia, the human affinity for other life forms, Melloy explores cognitive adventuring, crossing species lines through imagination and empathy. Her work resonates with Deleuze and Guattari's concept of becoming animal, suggesting that queer desire is not just about human sexuality, but about creative alliances with all forms of life. Their perspective challenges both biological reductionism and social constructivism. Instead of reducing sexual desire to genetics or treating it as purely cultural, queer ecology suggests that desire is a fundamental life force that drives evolution through creative involution, non-linear, collaborative forms of change. Queer desire in this view is not against nature, but central to nature's ongoing creativity. Queer ecology also addresses reproductive justice. Mainstream environmentalism often focuses on population control, framing non-white reproduction as a threat to planet. This approach ignores how consumption patterns in wealthy nations drive environmental destruction and reinforces racist and colonial assumptions about who deserves to produce. Gaussian shows how concerns about overpopulation intersect with anxieties about queer sexuality. Both are seen as threats to the nation, requiring regulation and control. A queer ecological perspective challenges these assumptions, recognizing that reproductive justice involves not just the right to control one's body, but also the right to raise children in healthy environments. This perspective connects environmental activism with struggles for racial and economic justice. Material ecocriticism and queer ecology together offer a radical rethinking of our relationship to nature. They challenge the assumption that nature is a source of fixed norms, showing instead that natural diversity includes sexual diversity. They reveal how spaces have been organized to enforce heteronormativity and how these spaces can be reclaimed. They connect environmental destruction with other forms of social injustice, including colonialism, racism, and homophobia.